Well, went so wrong. Can Julia Gillard recover? Joining me are two of the country's sharpest political strategists. Labor campaign advisor Bruce Hawker and Liberal pollster and strategist Mark Textor. Bruce, to you first. What the hell happened?
Well, I think we're in an interregnum right now. We haven't seen the result of the final result of the Malaysian discussion, so that's out there, and we've obviously got a long way to go on carbon tax. So they are in a very difficult position, and I think, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, there was an expectation that they would go through a really tough period. I liken this to a bit of a phony war, though, that we're in at the moment, because we're not getting out the alternative package. We're not showing people what the likely tax cuts are going to be in response to all this. So it is a tough time.
There are things to hope for, Bruce, but what happened to drag down Labor's vote to the worst on record?
Well, I think that's one of the issues. I think that's a really big issue because the opposition's able to attack, and the government really doesn't have much to come back with at the moment. But I do think the other issues which are really out there are the fact that this is a government which is operating within a hung parliament.
But, Mark, this doesn't seem to be the full explanation to me. I think we really have to see the performance of Julia Gillard herself. She simply hasn't performed as so many people, me included, thought she would.
Well, we can focus on the issues, and we will later, but I think there's a broader issue here, which is a continuing uncertainty in the community about the direction of this country. And when there's already uncertainty about the direction of the country, the direction of the world economy, we've seen what's happened in Greece lately, adding to that uncertainty by way of instability in your party and a non-resolution to critical issues like debt, like cost of living pressures, and boats just adds to uncertainty. So Labor arguably is fueling uncertainty through the very mechanisms they put in place.
Bruce has said, well, you know, we've got the Malaysian deal and we've got the carbon dioxide tax deal, and once they're done, this is Labor's strategy, we hope that people will see, oh, that's okay, and give them ticks. It's interesting, isn't it? The Malaysian deal's still not signed after 6 weeks. And the carbon dioxide tax talks over the last few days seem to be, well, almost at a stalemate, if not a collision. What happens if one of those two fall over?
Well, it's not about the deal, it's about the outcome. Labor is completely focused on process, not about outcome. The boats haven't stopped, and it's likely, given their past record, that they won't stop.
Yeah, well, I think the boats have slowed, but I don't know, Bruce, even if there is a deal on the carbon dioxide tax, that people will say, oh, goody, that's all right. I just think the whole process of getting a tax that they promised not to give has hurt Gillard enormously.
Look, I think that's true. I do think that it's very difficult to campaign for a tax, which is effectively what this government's doing at the moment. And so they are going to have to campaign extremely hard and aggressively from the day that they actually get this new package out on the table. They can't lose a moment to get out there and start telling people that, OK, the top 1,000 polluters are going to be taxed and taxed hard, but you are going to get compensation in your households. If they can get that message out, people feel comfortable about it.
They've been trying that, Bruce. They've been trying that. The problem is, has the public stopped listening to Julia Gillard?
Well, I think they're waiting to hear from Julia Gillard on the big answer that they want to hear, and that is, how are they going to be protected from the worst effects of a carbon tax? If she can get a message out about that, and it resonates with the electorate, and we've seen some polling which suggests that it would, once they heard about it, then there's a fair chance that she's going to come back. But it's going to be tough.
If they listen, I don't know that they're listening, Mark, and what's interesting, in this leadership vacuum, because I do think now there's a vacuum, Kevin Rudd is coming back. And it's been a huge destabilising influence. You had the Canberra Times front page this week saying Rudd was plotting. You then had that notorious photo of Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd coming down the parliamentary corridor, clearly in mutual loathing and hate after a meeting that was said to involve screaming matches. And in fact, Kevin Rudd was asked on TV about whether there'd been screaming matches, and he took it out angrily after being asked on the ABC journalist that had set up the interview. Have a look at this.
What's been described as possibly 2 screaming matches between you and Julia Gillard yesterday. Did they take place?
Of course not. That's just you know, that's just fabrication. What the Prime Minister and I were discussing yesterday at some length was the challenges we face with Indonesia over live cattle and how we move that forward. There's one other thing, which is actually why you asked me onto this program, which you haven't asked me about, and that's about the conviction of Abu Bakar Bashir in Indonesia. I don't know whether you want to talk about that or not. I am particularly pissed off.
Mark, what's Kevin Rudd's role in all this?
Well, I think he doth protest too much there. I think clearly he's the cause of a destabilised government. He certainly was blamed during the last election campaign for their loss by senior Labor figures. Certainly in terms of what the Australian public think, they think that he's waiting in the shadows. The ghost of Kevin Rudd haunts Labor still.
Bruce, Kevin Rudd seems to me to be angling again for the job. He's even said that he's learnt his lessons from last time, that he is a newer kind of Rudd that listens. And it's been incredible the sort of interviews he's been given, including on The Circle this week.
And to listen better. And I think that's probably something I've learnt.
Now, you see a number of MPs, anonymous, and Labor MPs and ministers in the papers this morning saying they can't believe he's doing this, that he was totally dysfunctional as a leader, that he should be sacked, that he's a bully. They've had enough.
Well, I don't actually see the terrible acts of disloyalty by Kevin that other people seem to be seeing in those interviews. I think he's somebody who's just come out and said, in response to a first anniversary interview about what went wrong with his government, that he didn't do enough consultation with senior colleagues. He probably didn't engage enough senior advisors within his own office. He was being reflective. Now, obviously,
Bruce,
while
pushing it out, Bruce.
while he's there as the person who was the Prime Minister, obviously there's always going to be speculation. And while polls show that he's running so popularly in the electorate, particularly in Queensland, then it's obviously there's going to be a lot of speculation. I mean, it's grist for the mill for people like you, Andrew.
Fanning it. He's fanning it. Isn't he fanning this? He's doing this deliberately.
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert on internal Labor Party matters, but certainly the Australian public are concerned he's fanning this instability.
The media might be.
Well, he is, Bruce, and you know this. But listen, Mark, who would Labor fear most to lead... Oh, sorry, who would the Liberals fear most to lead Labor to the next election? I think they've got Julia Gillard's measure. She's gone. Rudd? Someone else? Greg Combet? Bill Shorten?
Look, I think their thing is to run their own race. You can't run a race by looking behind you, and they're very much focused on the issues that matter: cost of living pressures, getting debt down, and stopping the boats.
But I think it's interesting that the Liberal Party's now rushed out an ad, the redone Lemon ad, focusing this time on Kevin Rudd. I think this is an early shot in their campaign to try and tackle Kevin Rudd. Have a look.
Now, Kevin O'Lemon's popping up everywhere because he really wants his old job back. But then again, we all know who calls the shots.
So clearly, Bruce, I think the Liberals are starting to worry about Kevin Rudd being the new Labor leader at some stage.
Well, I think they're trying to create instability within the ranks of the government, and that's, I think, what that strategy is all about. I actually think that the best thing that the Labor Party's got going for it at the moment is Tony Abbott. I really do. And I'm being absolutely objective about that. I think the one person who should be concerned about churn and change right now is Tony Abbott. I think a lot of people in the Liberal Party will say, mate, you've done a great job, you've destabilised, you've gone in there and hit hard, but now we want somebody...
59% to 41.
And as preferred Prime Minister, even in these straitened times for Labor, he can't outstrip Julia Gillard as preferred Prime Minister. So I actually think that the real danger for the Liberal Party is that they come and tap him on the shoulder and say, mate, time for Malcolm Turnbull, you've done a good job.
Good try,
I
Bruce.
actually think it's true.
If not Julia Gillard, who?
Well, I don't think there is a second choice. I don't think there is a plan B. They've made their change, and I don't think that they can be in the business of making any more changes. It's Gillard to the election, and she has to sell this carbon tax really hard. She has to solve the Malaysian boat people problem, and then I think she's back in the race.
And lots of ifs. Look, Mark Textor and Bruce Hawker, thank you very much for joining me. Coming up, Julia Gillard is showing us a lot lately of boyfriend Tim Matheson. Program psychologist Sandy Ray says something doesn't fit.